Today we're going to learn how to run a loop in Bubble. And this is particularly useful in situations when you have multiple actions that you want to apply to a list of objects in the database. In our particular example, the user is going to enter in emails, and after that user clicks on run the loop. In this example, we could have just said create accounts. Then we're going to create all of those users. So we'll create, in this case, 4, 5, 10, however many emails they put in. We're going to create a user for each of those emails. And that'll happen essentially with API workflows. So this might sound a little bit advanced, but we'll break it down step by step to help you understand it. First thing you want to do is go into the Bubble editor, and then in whatever app you're going to add these loops in, and then go into your settings, check over into the API section, and make sure that you've enabled a workflow API, and enable workflow API and backend workflow. So click that right here. So also mention this right now is that you need to be on at least a personal plan with your Bubble account. So you'd be paying at least $29 per month to be able to access these backend workflows and APIs and run loops like this. Now it's going to give us access to this section down in here when we click up at the top right, all the way down into backend workflows. So now we can access all of these workflows that want to create this. Essentially, an endpoint is what it's called, but this is just the set of instructions that we're going to run every single time in this loop. So for each item in the list, we're going to run the set of instructions, which in this case is called an endpoint. And so what we'll do here is we'll say click here to add an endpoint, and we're going to click new API endpoint, and it appeared right here. I'm going to change the event color to purple so it's easy for us to recognize. And then I'm going to call this create account 2. When you're creating the API and the endpoint here, you want to make sure that your name doesn't have any spaces in it. If it just has all characters, we can leave this. We can say this is a public endpoint. That's okay. We can run without authentication and privacy rules, because in our situation, this is just a demo, and we can explore those other settings further, but let's keep this tutorial simple. So the next thing that we want to do in this loop is we need to add a few parameters. So essentially what we want to add to any loop that we're going to run through an API workflow, any of these loops, we need the list. We need a list, and then we also need to know at what point in the sequence is the list at. So as in, what iteration are we at? So if we ran this workflow 2 times, then we are moving into the 3rd iteration, as an example. So now let's add a new parameter. And the key for this parameter is going to be called the emails. And we're going to check this box. This is a list/array. Type text is fine, and that's what we're going to pass in. We're going to essentially, what this is, these new parameters, this is data that we're going to bring from the page, wherever the user has put that information in, and then we're going to bring it to this endpoint. Basically, we're going to make sure that we have access to that information here when we are defining the actions that we want to run. So now that we've got the emails, we also want to know the iteration, as we were just discussing. So where are we in this loop? And iteration is a type number, because we need to be able to quantify this. So now I'm going to reference what we've done here. So we know that for every email on the list, what we're going to do is we're going to create an account. So let's do that. We're going to say we're going to create an account for someone else in our situation. And the email, we want to select emails. And now here's where we need to be able to reference the particular email in the iteration, right? Because we can't just say it's the first item in this list of emails. It's the second item. We need to know it's the whatever iteration we're on, right? So that's why we've created this iteration variable, because we'll say item number. So take this list of emails, find the item number, which is equivalent to iteration, okay? So item number iteration. So whatever this, if this is the second time we've run this workflow, it's going to be item number 2. Third time we ran the workflow, item number 3. And we're not going to define any other fields. We just won't worry about that. And then moving on, we've created this second workflow for sending an email. So we'll also send an email to this email. So we'll click on here to send email. And in the to section, we can define again, list of emails. And here we're going to go item number. And we want to select iteration here. And I've already written these, and this sender name is bubble tutorial. Subject is example loop. Some text, just some basic text to send in the email. So then we're going to copy this over. Don't worry about this. You could put it whatever you want in this email. It really isn't important. The important point is just the example we're illustrating. Finally, the last step is really crucial because this is we're going to continue running this workflow, and but we want to stop the workflow once we've reached all of the iterations. So I hope that makes sense. So now what we want to do then is inside this endpoint, we're going to schedule the workflow. We're going to go to custom events, schedule API workflow. And the API workflow we want to run is a create account to, schedule dates is current date / time. Just ignore the privacy rules. That's not important. And then here, emails, it's the same list because we're running this loop on the same list of emails. Now the iteration we need to change because we know that in this case, we're moving on to the next iteration, right? We want to go to the next item in our list. So that means we need to do iteration plus 1. So if we were on the first item in our list, we're now on the second. But we don't want to just schedule another workflow and keep going if we've fulfilled the list. And so that's why we have this only when condition. So when iteration is less than emails count. So what's happening here? So first let's create that in the only when section. So we're back in here. So in the only when section, click right here. We'll say iteration is less than emails count. Okay, so emails is a list of items, and when we use this count function, it's going to count how many items are in that list. So what we're essentially done now is we say, well, if we're on the second iteration and there's 3 emails in this list, then move on to the third email. But if we're on the third iteration, 3 is not less than 3 emails. Therefore, stop. We're done. We've ran this workflow for all 3 emails. So that's it on the backend area. We've done defining that. The next thing that we're going to do is move into the area that we had built this loop demo in here. You could reference any kind of list of data of items in the database that you want to run this, because this could also be, for example, a repeating group that we drew on the page that happened to be a list of texts. For example, we'll just say it's a list of texts, or a list of really any objects. Not important, right? So that's my source of list. Okay, and then now let's figure out what's going to happen when we want to run the loop. So this could be create users in our example, or whatever actions you're running. Just put that text right there. Click start set at workflow. And right in here is where we want to click here to add an action. And we want to say custom events, schedule an API workflow. Okay, so the API workflow that we want to schedule is this workflow that we created called a created account. We want to schedule the date. This is right now, so just run it immediately. Ignore the privacy rules when running this workflow. We just want to make it simple. Just check that. Don't worry about it. The emails. So here is where we're defining the list, because we've added this list. So if you wanted to collect, for example, if you had an object in your database called words, and you wanted to run a workflow on each word, you would have created back in the workflow section. You saw we've created these keys. So we name this whatever we want and define the type. And that's how we're able to reference it. So you can see we've created emails, we created iteration, we can create a third one, and we'll be able to reference those keys back on our page, and we want to pass that information. So that's how we're passing it. So in our case, we're gonna say multi drop down emails value, because that's a list of text, a list of emails basically. And iteration, we're going to start on the first iteration. So we're just going to say one, start at the beginning and go through each of them. And that's it, guys. We are done. We have completely set up our demo. So let's now run this loop, and you can apply this system to any kind of loop that you want to create in your Bubble application. I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys will do. So now let's demo our creation. Okay, so we've created 2 people. Now let's run this loop for these 2 users. All right, so it's ran. Let's now check that this will show up in Family Guy Lovers inbox. It might take a moment for the workflow to finish. We will also check our spam folder. And there we go. As we can see, example loop has showed up as we set it up to be from bubble.io. Now let's check the other email, which we had created, which was for 253 Digital. So as we can see, example loop is showing up here for our 253 Digital email as well. If you would like help with your project, please visit this link, which will be included in the description, and fill out this brief form, letting me know a little bit about your vision for your product, what you're trying to build, and I'll see how I can help you out, whether that's through tutoring or if that's through just doing a full-on done-for-you website where we go in and we'll finish that app for you. Next up, you can also go to newagedevelopment.bubbleapps.io/signup login. Link will be in the description, and you can sign up here to become a better developer. This is our community and forum for you to have a space to ask questions, get answers, and have tips overall for just becoming an awesome epic developer who can build anything that you want online. So looking forward to seeing you guys in the next video.